Girl.
And with that, we are live. Welcome everybody to Health Coach Tip Tuesday. I have Jennifer Woodward here, and we are about to go over some tools, tips, and resources to help your health coaching business. This week, we are talking about anxiety and depression and going through a functional lab analysis where we're actually going to go through 2 different labs to show you how FDNs really assess kind of sneaky internal things that could be contributing to other issues like anxiety and depression. And this week, what we're giving away is a career counseling session with one of our FDN career counselors or career advisors.
That's a really good giveaway.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So if you guys are interested in learning more about the FDN program, how you can utilize lab tests like the ones we're going to be going over today, then you'll definitely want to get a career counseling session. And you can do that very easily by just typing the word lab in the comments below. If you're on Facebook, if you're watching us on YouTube or on a replay, you can also comment lab below and we will send you a message with the link to be able to set that up. Okay, with that, let me introduce again Jennifer Woodward, our association. How are you doing today, Jennifer?
I am great today. I'm really good. It's a beautiful day in California.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's kind of overcast here in Austin, Texas. That's why I'm wearing a nice little sweater. I feel like this one reminds me of being by the beach, even though I'm not by the beach, just because of the pattern. So I'm like, yes. You know, if I'm going to have to bundle up, at least I can look down and remind myself of an area that I'd rather be at.
That's so true. That's true.
So let's get into it today. Again, we are talking about anxiety and depression and how FDNs really assess that, because we're not medical professionals, we're not licensed practitioners, we're not here to diagnose anybody of anything specific. And to me, personally, I feel like anxiety and depression can be something that you diagnose if you go to a doctor or a therapist or somebody who has that sort of capability, or it can also be a symptom of something that might be going on either in a deeper root cause or, you know, just something that your body's kind of going through. So it can magnetize a symptom of anxiety or depression. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you are totally right, Jess. And really, I mean, depression and anxiety in the literature, it's proven like women are more affected than men by depression and anxiety to an exponential amount, really. And I see, like in my practice, I really focus in on women's hormones, right, in their period. So I see a huge correlation between hormone imbalance and then the symptoms of anxiety and depression. And you're right, some of these women, they're not necessarily, they don't have a diagnosis, right, because they're not going to a doctor, or maybe they have had a past diagnosis and they're, you know, working with a functional practitioner wanting to do something a little bit more natural. But there's so many correlations between, you know, hormonal imbalance and then gut imbalance, as we're going to see today. And just those feelings of either feeling more down than you would normally feel, or maybe more anxious when you feel like, gosh, I have nothing to feel anxious about. So what is going on with my body, right? It really confuses a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think that's where it kind of gets a little bit iffy, right? When you're working with somebody, if you're a health coach or a functional health coach or somebody in this space where, you know, you're trying to assess so many different things that are going on with them so that you can help. You know, like you and I talked about this last month, the idea of body literacy, of understanding more about what's going on with your body, because these are all just triggers to kind of stimulate something to you, either slow down or I need attention on this, or, you know, maybe intuitively you're like, this isn't the right direction to go or the right person to talk to. And I think we have been taught to ignore those as, you know, we are just so inundated with things to do or, you know, deadlines to meet or family obligations. And us as coaches, especially FDN coaches, we're here to really educate our clients by helping to connect these dots so that they can see, like, you know, yes, you can go to a doctor and get diagnosed as depressive or anxiety and get medications, but is it really going to get rid of the reason why that's happening? Probably not.
100%. You're so right too with that body literacy. Like, we are digging into root cause issues here, right? And I feel like that's something that even a supplement, you know, isn't going to like fix your anxiety or or fix your depression, right? But it's this holistic, like whole body lifestyle intervention that we really practice and preach at FDN, where we're going over diet and rest and exercise and stress relief, and maybe at the very end, some supplementation if we need it based on lab results. But you're totally right, Jess. You're like, people are pushing down their emotions. They're not in touch with maybe their busyness or the stresses of their own lives. And so they start to feel like, oh no, I'm sliding onto this spectrum of either anxiety or depression. I ask my clients all that, like, if you were to fall somewhere on that spectrum, kind of where would you be? And there are some women who don't even realize that they've been living in this state of like constant anxiety. And some that do. I have clients who will call it like my anxiety, almost like it's their dog or something, because it's such a part of their life and they're so entwined in it, not realizing that it's not necessarily due to like a circumstance, and it's not necessarily due to a brain imbalance. Sometimes we can find issues in the gut, and sometimes we can find it in hormone imbalance. And just, riffing off that, it is a brain issue, but not in the way we think, right? It's a hypothalamus issue, right? A pituitary issue. You're inputting all these stress signals and overwhelm, and you're out of touch with your body's natural rhythms. And of course, that's going to manifest in a mood issue because your body's asking you, like you said, hey, slow down, pay attention to me, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just want to thank everybody who's joined us today. I see a couple people jumping in and out. I'd love to get some feedback from our community of people who are watching before we kind of move into the labs. How many of you guys are dealing with this with your clients or have dealt with this in the past? Like, how many of you have resolved the issues with anxiety and depression by just maybe some basic lifestyle changes or some, some strategic supplementation? I can speak for myself, and I'll give you guys a pretty clear sort of personal story to get it started off. Hopefully we get a couple comments before we get into the labs. But, I am sure some of you have watched me over the last few weeks and know that I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition when I was maybe 12 or 13. So for 20 years, dealing with digestive issues of ulcerative colitis. And, that brings its own depression and anxiety, not just the physical, but, just worrying about where's the bathroom, or as a kid, like, did I take all of the pills they told me to take? Like, that's not something as a kid, it's not the normal thing, the normal anxieties or depression that you would have to deal with. And I fought with that for a long time mentally, just trying to get my head around it. I've been on antidepressants on and off, but just innately, it wasn't really what I felt. I didn't, you hear this all the time, I didn't feel like myself. And I just remember one time being on an antidepressant. It was very low dose and getting into an argument with my boyfriend at the time, and halfway through the argument, completely forgetting what I was arguing with him about. Like, just like total lapse of anything. And it really made me step back. And I remember because he was just like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know. And this is like maybe a 5-minute argument. We were just yelling and screaming at each other. And I was so adamant. And then I just completely lost my train of thought. And it had never happened to me before. And I was probably only 21 at the time. So like, in no way should a 21-year-old be losing their train of thought in that way. And I was just like, get me off these pills. And it just really set me on a different path. And, before I found FDN, like, I just kind of learned a little bit here and there, but I knew that there was another way. FDN just really kind of helped illuminate that path more clearly and made it a lot quicker to walk down toward the other side, where I could really look back and see, oh, okay, I was just really looking for a better option. So that's just, that's just personally a little bit of what I've been through, and I've seen the difference in the transformation, just making really simple changes too, like my diet, changing my environment of where I live and the work that I'm doing and the people that I surround myself with were massive change in me being able to kind of recognize when I start feeling those anxious symptoms, and maybe I can take a walk outside barefoot, or maybe take the afternoon off and not work extra. Right. It's been super helpful. Well, did you see we have a comment from Carrie? Hi, Carrie. Thank you so much for commenting.
And Carrie, I'm gonna say, like, we hear that all the time. Jess, you too, like as FDN practitioner, probably that's something that that we hear a lot, and that manifests in so many different ways, because you know the person that you were or you are when you feel healthy and vibrant and strong, Carrie, right? And then, you know, life circumstances, hormone circumstances, gut circumstances come into play, and all of a sudden you kind of forget who that person is and you just want to feel good again, right? So thanks for commenting.
Mm-hmm.
I totally feel you here.
Yes, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us. You know, the last 2 months, I don't want to pry too much, but whatever it is that's been going on with you, like, it's definitely reversible, and it's definitely maybe just a clear point for you to take some steps to kind of help yourself from this point forward. And it looks like we're getting lots of comments now. So
yeah. Good discussion, right?
So, you just got to be a little vulnerable, and then everybody else will be vulnerable too. Hi, Esther. Esther joins us every single week. Thank you so much. Glad to see that you're, you've done well with FDN, and how you would want to handle clients with postpartum depression. That's a big one.
I feel like I could hop in there because that's my wheelhouse. So I do
totally
deal with women and hormones and their periods and post-pregnancy. And this is also me, Jess. So this is one of the reasons I actually came to FDN, is because after the birth of my third child, I spiraled. My hormones were a mess. I couldn't sleep. I had awful anxiety. I mean, insomnia that was just, was awful. I couldn't sleep more than like 2 or 3 hours a night. And now I know, what was going on with my body. So Esther, after the rise in flow, or the rise in kind of like subsiding of estrogen during pregnancy, you feel pretty good during pregnancy because of your estrogen levels. But then after you deliver, generally your progesterone levels drop out. They shouldn't drop out, but most women are estrogen dominant these days. And so you've got all this excess estrogen left in your body, and you've not been making enough progesterone. Number one, because you're not ovulating while you're pregnant, right? But number two, you don't have enough of those healthy stores of progesterone. So this is one of the top things I see with women after delivery experiencing postpartum depression. Their progesterone levels are really flatlined. So I would encourage you, if this is you or your clients, to really go into one of these tests that we're going to talk about today and look at progesterone levels, because that can give you a lot of insight as to what's going on, because this specifically is a hormonal issue. What a great question.
Oh, fantastic. And I see we have a couple of other questions. I want to see if we can try to get to them after, but I don't want to run out of time, so we can go through these labs. So Jennifer has been really great to provide 2 labs today. Let's see, let's pull them up. So we have a GI map and the SHP FDN hormone panel, which is awesome. So what's the best view for this here? This one. Let's start with the GI map.
Let's do it. And the reason we wanted to highlight these for you guys today is because these are the labs that you're taught in the course. These are what we're running. I remember running, a gut test on myself when I was going through the course. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to run one of these on everybody I know. Because for me, we found intestinal parasites and some pretty gnarly dysbiosis. And getting to the root cause of those things, really, it changed a lot for me. And so I brought this up for you guys. This is a client who does actually experience some pretty intense anxiety. So the first page, there's nothing really remarkable on it, and that's good, because if there was something on the first page, that's something that FDN practitioners would refer out to. You'd send your client to a GI doc. So we'll go to the second page. Let's see here. We can do that, Jess. I know, you're like,
I know this is like a brand new, like, just sharing a screen has been kind of a brand new thing using this. But yeah, we're gonna make it work.
I love it.
It's
so
here we go.
Okay, good. All right. And coming to page 2 on the GI map, here's where we start to see some things really come into play. So again, this client was struggling with some pretty severe anxiety. She's perimenopausal, so she's about 55 years old, and this has been an issue for her for quite some time, 10 or 15 years. So right away, we can see this incidence of Helicobacter pylori, and that's a little a bacteria that burrows into your stomach lining and secretes an enzyme called urease, which lowers the acidity of your stomach. So really, I said it opposite. Your stomach becomes less acid, but on the pH scale, it's becoming more alkaline, right? And when your stomach acid becomes more alkaline, you are unable to break down your protein. So you can be eating this really great Mediterranean, paleo, carnivore diet, but if that's not getting broken down in your stomach, your proteins are not digesting in your stomach, you're not pulling out any of those amino acids. And we know that neurotransmitters are built from amino acids. So here we're starting to kind of peel back the layers and see, you know, why these things are happening. How can H. pylori lead to anxiety? Well, if you follow the trail, you can really see that indeed it does. And so at FDN, this is something that we would address through, you know, dietary interventions, through lifestyle interventions, through a targeted supplement protocol, and starting to get rid of that H. pylori or just bring it back into balance, because H. pylori is actually a commensal organism, meaning that it is in most people's stomachs, and generally doesn't cause an issue. But elevated here can definitely be associated with anxiety because, again, she's not getting nutrients from her food. So what do you think about that, Jess?
Oh, most definitely. I think, you know, it can be a little difficult because it's a commensal bacteria, but again, when it's out of range, I think this is just a clear indicator. Again, we're not trying to diagnose somebody with H. pylori necessarily. We're just saying your internal environment is cultivating an area for this to grow more prevalently. And so we want to address why this is happening. And you'll definitely see this as we scroll through some of the other imbalances here. Like, that's not the only thing that's overgrowing. So that fits into that internal ecology, that internal environment. You want to make sure that the terrain isn't set up for these things to overgrow. It's set up for it to be in better balance.
That's exactly right. And that is 100% what we do as FDNs is we, like you said, optimize the terrain. We just help people learn themselves how to rebalance things that are out of balance in their own bodies. And this is clearly, you know, a woman who's out of balance, right? So we can see here, these are markers of normal bacterial flora, meaning they are supposed to be in our bodies. They're good bacteria, right? But if you've got an imbalance in your lifestyle and your stress and your diet, you know, you are going to experience something like this. And when those bacteria are at normal levels, everything's fine, right? But when they start to overgrow, you can start to feel pretty cruddy. And you've now got this almost war going on in your gut. And some people, you can actually feel it. You've got actual gut symptoms like Jess had for so long. And some people, it's more insidious, right? And so it happens more in your brain. And we actually call the gut your second brain, right? So I love this analogy, like or really a pictorial representation at when you're a fetus, you actually, your first brain, your actual brain, is connected by a clump of tissue to your second brain, which is your enteric nervous system or your stomach. And there are more signals that travel from your gut to your brain than there are from your brain to your gut. So if your gut is all out of balance, it's all wacky and wonky, you're absolutely going to feel it here. And like we said, you know, sometimes that's a little more slow going and you don't realize it right away. But like Carrie was saying, all of a sudden, I don't feel like myself anymore, right? And it can absolutely start in the gut. So these are things that we just want to, again, rebalance with our Dress for Health Success protocol and things that we'd start working on as FDN practitioners.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how, you know, just one test like this can really just, I guess, keep somebody to see, or keeping them to see like different sort of aspects that could be going on. And then when you take all of this and kind of correlate with their medical history and their intake forms, it really starts to make a lot of sense. I know with some of this stuff, people get a little bit in the weeds here where they're like, oh, I need to get rid of this particular overgrowth or this overgrowth, but we don't look at it that way. You know, we're looking at, this is all just supposed to be in balance. And so this is just keeps correlating. It's not about specifics of, okay, let's look at this opportunistic bacteria. It's more of like, well, let's figure out how we can help the better bacteria to keep this one in check, or to keep the other ones that we're seeing on here in check, because there's quite a few. And I wanted to like kind of get down toward the bottom, because the best thing about the GI map test that I really loved is this whole section on intestinal health.
Yep.
Like there's so many great things that you can get out of here that I think correlate to even more than just the bacteria that are going on. So I don't know if you want to maybe just touch on this really quickly before we move on to the next test.
Love to. Yes, yes. So you're totally right. This is definitely like the gold mine of the GI map, and because we need to see, what's going on physically in the body, but then what's going on from this like big picture view. And right here, you can see this marker of elastase. This is a measure of like pancreatic function. So the pancreas, of course, secretes your enzymes: lipase for fat, amylase for carbohydrates, protease for protein. And here we can see that all over function is low, right? So on one hand, we've got this, H. pylori that's not allowing her to break down her protein well. On the other hand, now we have, low pancreatic enzymatic function. So she doesn't have all the enzymes to break down any of her food. So again, she can be eating this great diet and she could be taking amazing supplements, but without the enzymes available to break those things down, a lot of her food's just kind of passing through her. And if that's the case, she's not absorbing any of the nutrients she needs, like zinc and B6 and magnesium and iron, that build really robust immune health and also brain health. And coming back again, not absorbing her amino acids is absolutely going to lead to a deficiency of neurotransmitter activity like serotonin and dopamine. And this can cause some major issues with anxiety and depression, right?
Yeah, and I think that, with this, something like you just had said, like this is going to deplete a lot of those nutrients or micronutrients or minerals. And then people might think, oh, I just need to supplement with more of those things. And yeah, that could be helpful in the short term to kind of help somebody's mood or their energy level or fatigue to subside. But overall, like you're just going to have to keep adding more on top of more on top of more, to the point where you're taking like an entire bottle worth of minerals or nutrients, or again, you're not getting to the root cause of like, where is all of that going? Like you should be able to get a good majority of those things from the food you're eating. Mm-hmm. And if you're having to over supplement, that should also trigger you as a coach or a functional practitioner to really think, let me look deeper as to why somebody needs to keep taking these things. And let's see if we can't maybe fix the terrain or fix the imbalance here.
100%. And you know my thing, I'm so big on ancestral living and ancestral nutrition. And so you can be damn sure your ancestors weren't taking, bottles and bottles of supplements, right? They would have to look for more creative ways to balance their health. So that's again what we do as FDN practitioners. Supplements are almost like a last resort. We are gonna intervene with lifestyle first. And this is a picture of someone who's super depleted. Due to stress, due to overwork, due to overexercise. So those are the things that we'd want to work on first, right?
Definitely.
I know we've got a Access Stress and Hormones panel too, Jess, and I know we want to get to that as well. And this is one of our new flagship tests at Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. So we're all kind of learning this together, and it's a really great test. It's like well priced. I think it's only $150 to run this lab. Wow. You guys will laugh. I'm actually taking mine today. This is my 11 o'clock sample that I'm taking during our meeting, and I just think that this is a great way to assess hormones, but then also hormones are completely associated with brain function and how you feel. From a mood perspective. I see this all the time in my practice. And one of the things I wanted to point out here, this is a different case, but someone who was, had a lot of anxiety, just struggled with anxiety. We later found out that some of her anxiety was due to mold, which is really interesting. But you can see that stress picture that pops up on this saliva test. So a few things I just wanted to point out to you guys here. Let's look at her saliva progesterone. That's that first marker that you guys can see in Jess's screen. And it's not like off the charts low, but it's definitely low, right? And one way that we can correlate that with this test is you can look at the progesterone to estradiol ratio. And that's about halfway down that first big paragraph of markers. And her progesterone to estradiol ratio is 23, right? So that's definitely low. And what that means is her body's overproducing this estrogen, which is a growth hormone, a pushing hormone, right? And it's underutilizing, underproducing its progesterone. Progesterone, I like to call it the queen of hormones. I know other people would disagree with me because estrogen's so powerful in a woman's body. But I see progesterone as almost the savior of the body, right? She helps you sleep. She balances your mood. She gives you a sex drive and helps your metabolism stay nice and humming along, right? She actually balances the effects of too much estrogen that can possibly be cancer promoting. Progesterone has anti-cancerogenic, carcinogenic effects. So progesterone is just this beautiful hormone, and I look for it, as I was pointing out to Esther earlier. In any cases of depression or anxiety, I can pretty much tell you that your progesterone levels are going to be out of whack, probably along with elevated estrogen. And 100%, that's what popped up on this Access Stress and Hormones panel. And the beautiful thing about that is, we bring it back to dress, again, the diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, proper supplementation, and also our lifestyle interventions that we do at FDN. Sure, you can give somebody more progesterone. That's one way to do things. But if we're looking at the steroid hormone pathway, which I'm sure you guys have talked about on the show before, Jess, progesterone is used as a precursor to cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And so if your body's constantly under all this stress, again, from infections, from parasites, from overexercise, from undersleeping, from overworking, from, all the common stressors that we have today, where's that progesterone going to go? Well, it's going to go to support your body staying alive, not necessarily the body being in a balanced, even mood, or having a normal period, or, being of a normal weight, or getting normal sleep, right?
Yeah.
So the body's pretty smart. It has a survival instinct, but, a mood disturbance can definitely show us that there are some bigger issues going on. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, just looking through some of these, especially the ones in red, if you just look at the one above it, the melatonin is very low, which means that she's not getting that signal to go to sleep. And melatonin is also a big indicator of there being dysbiosis and issues in the gut as well. There's many other things that melatonin is good for. I think those are like the key ones that most people check into. But then even just looking at her cortisol, because you guys, this test goes through different times of the day to see where your cortisol levels are. And so the idea is that it's supposed to look like this curve where it's the highest in the morning and then just slowly dissipates throughout the day, so that when it comes time to sleep, that's when your melatonin will come up and your cortisol should be low. But it's sometimes when you have people who are hyperactive like this, where things are out of balance, then you'll have issues like this where it says cortisol in the evening is definitely above where it should be. So that's a huge problem.
And I was just going to chime in there and just say, and that's when her anxiety tended to be the worst, was right around that evening time. So thanks for pointing that out. Definitely correlates,
Yeah, so here you can kind of see, let's zoom out on this a little bit, but like that graph of here's your cortisol, and like it's supposed to be in this blue area, but you can kind of see how hers starts out a little higher in the morning, dips down, but then kind of comes up in the evening, which is going to make it really difficult for her to relax and want to go to sleep, and then she probably, I wouldn't doubt, probably staying up later than she wants to, just so that she can exhaust herself so that she can go to sleep at night, and I wouldn't be surprised if she was just doing all kinds of things to do that, which could then lead to like over exercising or, just a slew of issues that come along with just trying to calm your body down.
Yes. And so these are just great ways for us to kind of like quantify what's going on, with someone. And so I love that you guys were, chiming in here, and that this was a powerful topic for you. And ask us other questions like in this thread on the FDN group, and just tag us, and we're happy to come in and talk with you guys about it, because we know personally what it's like to deal with this, for ourselves, and then also for our clients, and using these lab tests, and then also the Dress for Health Success protocol can really have these amazing benefits and turn these like things around. That's life altering, not just for yourself, but really like for families and communities. When we're happier and healthier, that makes a really big impact. So I'm a huge fan of lab testing, huge fan of getting to educate clients and make them feel empowered. Once they have this information, it becomes really encouraging to them, to be able to work through their own protocol. So what a fun topic. Thank you, Jess.
Oh, definitely. This has been great. We've had a lot of great comments. Sorry we didn't really get to a ton of you, but we really do appreciate it. I know we had Brenda popped on here and just said that she's been dealing with a client with anxiety for a long time, very overwhelmed. You're definitely on the right track, looking at some of these sort of key points with the H. pylori and the different issues in the gut. Just keep on that track. If you have other questions about that in particular, you feel free to message or put something in here. We'll get back to you. after the show. Same thing with Nikki. Thank you so much for all of this. Celiac disease, any IBS issue is always going to bring on some form of depression or anxiety that's going to be physical and also mental, because it's really difficult to kind of handle what you're dealing with that. So I am not surprised to hear that it would lead to suicidal thoughts, but that's why you're there as a coach to kind of, help them through it. And also that's a normal reaction to, some people get a little apprehensive with wanting to deal with people and they just want to turn them over to a mental health professional, but it's not always the right option. So you want to make sure you're there for your clients in that respect. And, it can be kind of a taboo topic, but also you want to make sure that you're helping them in the best way possible. And then thank you also, Mandy. How often does the GI map give insights into root causes for IBS-D? Pretty specific question. And again, we're not here to diagnose, but looking at that bottom section of the GI map where you're looking at those intestinal markers can be a clear indication to kind of help the client. And then the client can also bring that test to their doctor to kind of make some of those correlations as well. Like, don't think you need to be the only person to work with somebody who has more chronic issues like IBS or celiac. It could be really helpful to kind of work in conjunction with their gastroenterologist as well, because you're going to be offering lifestyle habits and sort of dietary issues or exercise regimens that their doctor just doesn't have time or knowledge to help with. So that's another way that we can kind of work in conjunction with the medical professional, I think.
Yeah, it's always good to have a team, especially for these things. I, work with a couple of therapists and counselors that I always, have available if we need to refer out, because it really is a bigger issue, right? Than I think a lot of people even talk about. So don't be ashamed or embarrassed to reach out and ask for help. We are great practitioners, but we're just one part of your team. And really, at the end of the day, like I said, like, we want to put the power back in your court. Like, for us, we're teachers. It's our favorite job is to teach you and watch you become alive and empowered through the knowledge that, you're now gaining through some of these labs and through collaborative work.
Definitely. And thank you guys so much. This has been really fun. I almost feel like doing this, we should extend the time to go through labs like this. But we really appreciate you guys. We're just a little bit over time here. So make sure that if you're interested in getting a career counseling session, just type the word lab in the comments. We did have somebody ask if we could send these labs to them so they can look back at the video and kind of correlate what we're talking about. So if you're interested in downloading those, you can also type lab and I'll make sure that those get sent to you guys. And we appreciate all of you for hanging in there today. It's been super fun to get these comments, and we could definitely get you in contact with more information for some of those more specific questions that you guys had. So it's been Health Coach Tip Tuesday, every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm your host, Jess Delpino. And thank you so much to Jennifer Woodward, our Association Director, for joining me today to talk about anxiety and depression and how FDNs kind of look at it from a functional lab perspective.
Thanks for having me, Jess, and thanks for joining us today, you guys. It was great to see you. I'll see you next time.
Okay, thanks. Bye, everybody.